Chapter 12. Narcissus stayed a polite distance away from me after we returned to the pool. Once I was out of that misty tunnel I felt much better and I started enjoying my swim. Trevor and Kirill continued with their charming boyish behavior and even got me to join in. I went down the slide a few times and they even catapulted me off their broad shoulders. It was actually a lot of fun. I loved being able to focus on Trevor and Kirill without having to worry about dividing my time with my other men. I love my husbands and my boyfriend, but there are times when it gets to be a bit much. I didn't just need my space on occasion, I also needed some time in smaller groups and one-on-one. We did try to go out on dates with just one or two of them joining me, but there was always the moment when it was over and we'd have to return to the others. There, in the mirror, it was just us until Odin and reconvinced Nemesis to get us out. I didn't have any doubt that Odin would convince her. He'd do whatever it took to get the goddess of revenge to call off the curse. I just wasn't sure how long that might take. But I intended to make the most of every minute. If only I could have a drink. The hunger bothered me, but not nearly as much as the thirst. Swimming had turned into torture after a while, especially after all that exertion. I was so thirsty that I nearly took a sip from the pool. I can't deal with this anymore, Trevor said as we lounged on the grass. I need some water. Me too. I was grateful that he was the one to say it. I may be able to survive dehydration, but the bits in between recovery are not fun. Duh, Kirill said. It's worth the risk. If Nemesis undoes the curse, it won't matter anyway. Good point, Trevor said eagerly. Frankly, my thirst raged loudly enough to compel me to agree with anything. That got me some damn water. Shall I make us lunch? Narcissus offered. Yes. We all shrieked. Narcissus laughed and waved his hand. A blanket appeared beneath us and a spread of food between us. Dishes worthy of royalty cast their alluring aromas up to me. Roasted chicken, rack of lamb, prime rib, and a whole salmon, all done up fancy on silver platters. Bowls of steaming sides nearly outshone the main entrees, vegetables, mashed potatoes, and hot rolls crying out to be consumed. There was even a cool crisp salad. But my hand immediately sought one of the 4 pitchers of water first. I barely managed to get it in a glass before I lifted it to my lips. I moaned as I drank, and similar sounds came from my husband's. Narcissus laughed as he filled his plate. That's the one thing here that I can guarantee is real. I manifest the water myself. That's why your visitors don't die of dehydration, I said when I came up for air. Just so, he said. Man, you should have mentioned that earlier, Trevor huffed. Sorry. Narcissus gave Trevor a guilty look. I didn't think about it until now. I contemplated Narcissus. His speech still carried a bit of a modern twist, but he'd toned it down. I had a feeling that his exclamation the night before had been a slip. So had the bikini, but the chance to see a woman nearly naked had undoubtedly been worth the risk to him. After we quenched our thirst, we took our time easing our hunger. I savored the rich and complex flavors of each dish. If I hadn't known about the illusion magic, I wouldn't have suspected. They even filled my belly with warmth and satisfaction. I laid back with a groan after I finished. My pregnant belly bowled out firmly. Damn, I hadn't even considered how my starvation and dehydration could have affected Vero. I rubbed my hand over my stomach protectively. I've made a glutton of myself, I declared. Now I can't move. A nap is in order, Trevor agreed as he stretched out beside me. Kirill took up a position on my other side, and Narcissus laid out where he was and crossed his arms behind his head. It felt very companionable, and I forgot my suspicions as I settled securely between my husbands. Sleep overtook me quickly. One moment, I absently listened to my husband's deep breathing, and the next I joined them. My little siesta proved more restful than the full night's sleep I'd had the night before. I think my mind needed the respite even if my body didn't. As a goddess, I could do without sleep if I had to, but I didn't do it often. Sleep provided more than healing for my body. It healed my mind too. And this particular slumber delivered additional benefits. Someone was waiting for me in the dream realm. Morpheus, I said happily as I walked across the surface of the moon toward him, my feet crunching on the dry soil. The Greek dream god grinned as he inspected the scenery. Interesting dream. Well, I am a moon goddess after all. I shrugged. And I should have remembered that you're a dream god and could reach me here. Did Odin send you? Yeah. Morph shook his head with sympathy and disbelief. This is a new level of messed up even for you. It's not my fault, I said immediately. Rhee's the one who gave me that damn mirror. He's pretty broken up about it. Morpheus grimaced. Odin, Azrael and Toby are giving him heaps of hell. I told Odin not to do that, I growled. Well, kind of. I gave him a stern look. Morpheus mushed up his mouth. As a man who's been a recipient of one of your stern looks, I'm shocked that Odin wasn't instantly cowed into obedience. I don't think there's a force in any realm that could make Odin obey. I huffed. So, I should tell the guys to knock it off? Morpheus asked. Yeah, it's not Rhee's fault either, I said. He was only trying to be sweet. We all make mistakes. They haven't been able to find Aunt Nemesis yet, Morpheus said with a cringing expression. She went on sabbatical after her mom was executed. Shit, I whispered. And then I caught what he'd called her. That's right. She's your aunt, and Nyx was your grandmother. Yep. Morph nodded. Don't worry, V, when we find Nemesis, and I'll get her to end the curse. You've done a lot for us despite the toll it's taken on my family, and she owes you. If nothing else, she owes you assistance. For your position as one of the 12. Well, they're not 12 anymore since you killed so many of them, but you know what I mean. I thought Nemesis might be mad at the Olympians since we executed Nyx. I completely ignored his comment about my killing other Olympians. There wasn't a lot of love lost between Nyx and Nemesis. Morph shrugged. I think that might be what's bugging Aunt Nem the most. But it wouldn't matter. If she was mad at you, the Olympians must be obeyed, and if one of them is in danger, they must be assisted. Period. Any Greek god who can help you will. That's a relief to hear. Is everything okay in there? Morpheus asked. Odin wanted me to make sure that you were safe. You're not being tortured or anything, are you? No, we're fine, I assured him. Narcissus is a little strange and creepy. But we're safe enough, I think. Morpheus' eyes went twitchy. Auntie Nem doesn't curse people lightly, V. He's in there for a good reason. Humans killed themselves for Narcissus and he didn't care. In fact, he delighted in it. He was worse than an incubus. At least the incubi sleep with their victims and give them some pleasure before they suck up their life force. Narcissus gave nothing, only took. Are you saying that Narcissus took the suicides as sacrifice? Of course, Morpheus said with a pessimistic puff. That was Narcissus' justification. They were sacrificing themselves to a god. But that's not why they killed themselves. They pined for him until life became meaningless, and he would scorn them for it. He's evil. Be careful around him. I've hardly been around him long enough to judge whether or not he's changed. I pondered our little interlude at the riverside. But if he needs to be freed in order for us to be, I don't care. Nemesis can always recurse him. Good point, he said brightly. I'll tell Auntie Nem. She'll probably love that idea. It might even cheer her up. As soon as you can find her, you may want to try running around the god realm, calling, Auntie Nem, Auntie Nem, I suggested with a smirk. It sounded so much like Auntie M that I couldn't resist. Yeah, I'll do that, and I'll probably be the only one who gets the joke. Morpheus chuckled and rolled his eyes. But don't worry. Nemesis is a Greek. She won't be able to hide for long. Our pantheon is large enough that someone will spot her and tell her she needs to come home. I hope so. I chewed at my lip. I was looking at this as a sort of vacation. But now you have me worried. Nemesis will break the curse, V. He repeated more confidently. I told you not to worry. No, it's not her that I'm worried about. I recalled Narcissus' feverish eyes as he stroked himself. It's Narcissus. Anyone that's self-centered is bad news. Just keep promising him freedom, Morpheus said. As long as you have something he wants, you should be safe. He won't jeopardize his chance at freedom. Good point. I grinned. Okay, I'll make sure to lord that over him. But other than that, all of you are okay? So far, I said. But our magic doesn't work in here. Narcissus says his magic is only a poor reflection of itself, and he warned us against trying to use our magic at all, saying that since the mirror absorbs the dead, it may also absorb our magic. That sounds incorrect, Morpheus murmured. He may be playing you, trying to keep you weak. I'll ask Nem about it when we find her. Okay. Oh, and Lesya says hi. How is she? I asked guiltily, hating myself for being a horrible mommy and not asking after her instantly. I saw her crying. She told Odin that she saw your face in the mirror and you looked like a ghost, Morph said with an impressed expression. I don't know how she saw past the mirror's curse, but she did. The bond between a mother and her child is a miraculous thing, I said softly, as I stroked my belly. It seems so, Morph agreed with a far-off look. I inwardly winced. Morpheus' mother currently resided with her father, Dionysus, under a type of divine house arrest. I won't go into the reasons for her incarceration, it would take too long, but I hope she stay that way forever. Despite my relief over her imprisonment, my heart hurt for my friend, who had never known the type of motherly bond I'd mentioned. Anyway, Morph went on, looking awkwardly away from my sympathetic stare. Odin didn't believe Lesya at first, but she was so adamant. He said it gave him the shivers, and he got her away from the mirror as fast as he could. Smart man. Then you mirrored him from the mirror. Morpheus snickered. That was brilliant, by the way. Thanks. I smirked. You confirmed Odin's suspicions, he went on. He barred the dressing room door so no one could get in until we find Nemesis. Good. At least he listened to one thing I said. Lesya sounds just like you, Morph noted with a wry look. She was telling Odin off for not believing her. She said she isn't a liar, but he is a big poopy pants for thinking she was. That's my girl. I beamed at him. Tell her that I'm fine, but I miss her. And I'm definitely not a ghost. Will do. Morph nodded. Should anyone tell Iraq about this? I grimaced. I had considered mirroring Iraq, but the way things worked with my ring of remembrance, with me traveling through time when I went back and forth between the realms, I was probably with him. Iraq had his own ring and could jump over to the human realm too, but I couldn't see how he could help. He'd made me promise to include him if I ever went to war in HR, but this wasn't war and I didn't want to worry him. No, let him have his ignorant bliss, I finally decided. Unless one of my guys thinks Iraq can help, tell them I'll leave it up to them. Got it. Morph hugged me tightly. Take care of yourself, V. I'll do my best. Chapter 13. I inhaled the stifling air deeply as I woke and then scowled. I'd spent too much time in the steamy environment, and as much as I loved the heat, I needed to breathe some cooler air. I eased up on my elbow and looked around as I yawned. Damp tendrils of hair clung to my face and arms, but the rest of me had dried. My husband slumbered on peacefully, their bodies curled around me. Even their snoring had stopped, but Narcissus was gone. He must have gotten tired of waiting for us to wake up. I looked down at my swimsuit and frowned. I didn't like relying on Sir Wancelot for clothing. I sighed and slipped free of my husband's loose embrace. They shifted apart and settled onto the grass. I spared a moment to admire their sleep-relaxed faces and languidly sprawled bodies. Trevor was sporting a sandpaper shadow on his jaw, and it made him look dangerous, the bad boy at rest. Beside him, Kirill was starting to sprout the same stubble, but, ironically, his facial hair grew slower than Trevor's. I guess his hair put more effort into growing from his scalp. Even with the shadow on his chin, though, Kirill would never have the same rugged look that Trevor could get. His face revealed the truth of his blood, refined and regal, too wholesome to ever seem sinister. My sweet Russian prince. I contemplated waking them so we could go looking for Narcissus together, but their soft expressions and gently rising chests stopped me. Let them rest while they could. I'd find Narcissus on my own and come back for them. Strode across the grass and made my way out of the conservatory. I figured I'd start in the main room if I could find it. The thought gave me pause. What if I got lost in the palace and couldn't find my way back to the conservatory? Don't be ridiculous, I huffed at myself. The bonds I'd made with my husband's blood to heart and the enchantment of our wedding bands would lead me straight back to them. Only strong wards could hide them from me. Even then, I'd probably be able to track them up to the ward. I'd done so with Kirill once. I wandered through the eccentric, indecisive corridors that shifted styles like a trophy wife and finally chanced upon Narcissus' voice. I frowned at that, but then remembered that I'd been speaking to myself just moments earlier. Narcissus had spent centuries alone, Doubtless, he often spoke to himself too. Except that he wasn't. I pulled up short when I heard the blistering words. My acute dragon's senses honed in easily despite the considerable distance between Narcissus and me. Peeked around the corner. The conversation filtered out of an open door, beckoning me. I could hear Narcissus just fine, but another voice argued with him, and I wanted to see who it was. Another person in the palace meant that either they had just arrived or Narcissus had been hiding them from us. Either way, I needed to know who they were. I crept up to the door and crouched down by the frame. I figured that I'd have a better chance of going unnoticed if I stayed closer to the ground when I took my peek. Slowly, I eased around the edge and stole a quick glance. Then I pulled back and pressed flat against the wall in shock. Narcissus really was talking to himself, just not in the way I'd thought. Two Narcissuses faced off. One vibrant and opaque and the other a sheer, ghostly twin. The solid one wailed at the phantom. I won't do it. He'd been saying versions of this statement the entire time, but he'd yet to mention what it was. Then came another clue. I like them, and I'm glad they can't die in here. They're gods. Imagine the power they would give me. I'm not killing them. Solid Narcissus snapped. They're going to help me get free. You will never be free of me. Ghost Narcissus roared. Kill them or I will kill you all. A horrible clanging echoed through the palace, and I peered around myself with trepidation. The building shook like a bird settling its feathers and then went silent. I got to my feet and continued to warily scan the hallways, but nothing more happened. Mirror! Narcissus shouted. You can't kill us. You're made to imprison, not murder. You leave them alone. Do you hear me? Narcissus! I stepped into the room. The mirror Narcissus had disappeared, and the real one flinched guiltily. Vervain, you heard that? He asked. I nodded. How much of it? Enough to know we could be in danger, I said softly. The mirror can't hurt us. He repeated what he'd been yelling at it. The curse was made to imprison a god, not kill one. It would be going against its nature, against the very magic that created it, if it tried to murder us. Except you just threatened it, I pointed out. It thinks you're about to escape, and that may give it some leeway. Narcissus turned the color of sour cream. Tell me the truth. I stalked closer and stared him down. When was the last time the mirror pulled someone in? Narcissus grimaced and looked guilty. A couple of months ago. A couple of months? I gaped at him. I didn't want to tell you that the mirror has been growing in strength, he said apologetically. It discovered that it could feed on the energy of the humans who died here, and then it began pulling people in more and more frequently. It's become insatiable. I think it believes itself to be a god. He whispered the last bit as he stared around himself suspiciously. Fred Flintstone. I cursed viciously. This is not good. No, he agreed and then frowned. Who is Fred Flintstone? It's a cartoon, never mind. I curse strangely so that I don't teach my children bad words. You have children? Narcissus asked with a small smile. I have 3, and I'm pregnant now. I rubbed my rounded belly. You didn't notice. I like women with curves. He shrugged. I thought it was normal. Whose child do you carry? Trevor's son. I smiled softly. You already know the sex? Yes, but that's a long story. I waved my hand dismissively. And it's not important right now. We need to get back to my husband's. I hurried out the door with Narcissus charging after me. And would you mind returning my clothes? I asked as he caught up. Oh, certainly. Narcissus nodded and my old clothing returned. The clothing gave me a little more confidence, but I wouldn't breathe easy until I was reunited with Trevor and Kirill. I regretted leaving them now. Knew better than to split up in a strange magical place. Damn it all, why had I left them? Luckily, Narcissus took the lead, and in mere minutes we burst through the silver conservatory doors. My guys slept on, blissfully unaware. I hurried over to them and shook them awake. We have a problem, I said as they both sat up. What is it? Trevor stood, instantly scanning the room. The mirror has been taking people far more frequently than Narcissus first indicated. I explained. It's been getting powerful and has started to crave more power. It tried to get Narcissus to kill us since we wouldn't die here on our own. The men glared at Narcissus. I refused. Narcissus held up his hands in a warding gesture. He did, I confirmed. I heard him. In fact, the mirror was enraged by his refusal and has threatened to kill us all, including Narcissus. We think it's because I told it that you're going to help me escape. Narcissus grumbled. It would have found out eventually, it listens. But still, I shouldn't have said anything. It's fine, Narc, I said. I'll forgive a lot for the simple fact that you refused to murder us. Narc. Sorry, I tend to shorten people's names. I made a self-derisive snort. I guess that didn't work out so well. No, it's fine, Narcissus said. I don't mind. In the modern world, a narc is a lawman who specializes in arresting drug dealers, I explained. Drugs are called narcotics. That's a Greek word too, Narcissus grinned. It means to make numb. Yes, that's where they got the name. Fantastic. Trevor rolled his eyes. Yes, the Greeks influenced a lot of shit. Do you want some Windex or can we move on? I burst out laughing as Kirill rolled his eyes, and Narcissus just frowned in confusion. Well done, honey eyes. I slapped Trevor's shoulder in approval. Nice movie. Reference. Thanks. He smirked at me. I think we should try to contact Odin again, Kirill said. He needs to know. This has become dangerous situation. We can't, I said. I just saw Morpheus in my dream and he said that Odin locked the mirror inside my dressing room and is keeping everyone away from it until they find Nemesis. You can speak to people through your dreams? Narcissus asked with awe. I have a friend who's a dream god, I explained. Morpheus. You know him. Narcissus frowned. Isn't he related to Nemesis? She's his aunt. I nodded. Nemesis is Morph's aunt? Trevor asked. That's helpful. Why? Narcissus asked. Because he's our friend and can convince Nemesis to help us, Trevor answered. He also said that Nemesis is required to help me because I'm an Olympian. I added. You're an Olympian? Narcissus gaped at me. Why didn't you say so? It's kind of a new thing for me. I shrugged. And I didn't think it was important. You didn't think it was important? Narcissus asked in disbelief. You're practically a celebrity in my pantheon. But how? You're not Greek. Another long story. I sighed. I'll tell you after we get out of here. First, clothes for the guys and then let's get out of this room. Right. Narcissus nodded at the men and the clothes they'd been wearing when we first arrived took the place of their swimming trunks. Is there anywhere in this palace that you'd consider to be safe from the mirror? I asked Narcissus. Somewhere we can hole up until Nemesis releases us. Narcissus thought about it. The closer I am to the frame, the mirror's portal, the less I can affect the landscape. I think the mirror's magic is focused on the boundary there and must keep it as it is. If we stay near the glass, I think we'll be safe. That makes sense, I agreed. It's a weak point, an access point. Let's get to that frame, Trevor said as he started striding for the door. He never made it. None of you. Chapter 14. Walls rocketed up between us, separating Narcissus and me from the others. We all started shouting and pounding frantically on the barriers and searching for a way through. As we did, the grass changed to metal beneath my feet while the trees and pool disappeared. A new ceiling popped into place only a few feet above my head. Vervain. Narcissus' hand was on my shoulder, shaking me violently. Run. We were in a metal corridor, and the wall at the far end was moving closer. Rapidly. I gaped at it. I'll find you both, just stay alive. I hollered at my husbands and then I ran. A single path yawned open before us, the mirror herding us into the gloom. Couldn't do anything about it though. The metal plate scraped closer and closer, effectively forcing us down the corridor. We made it to a door at the end and Narcissus yanked it open. We rushed through and he slammed the door shut behind us. A deafening clamor announced the impact of the metal plate against the door. The palace shivered, and then stilled. I shivered and stilled too. It had been a while since I'd had to run for my life, but how do you stand your ground against a metal plate? I looked around the room we occupied warily. A bedroom. A grand one. A Greek one. The bed ruled the room on a marble pedestal with columns at each corner. Instead of posters, a crown of narcissus flowers floated over the center of the bed, trailing sheer violet curtains over the tops of the columns and then down to the mosaic floor. Patterns of more narcissus flowers wound through the mosaic, but soft, sage-colored rugs covered the artwork in places. A collection of chaise lounges, similar to those in the main room, sat to the side of the bed, and a rectangular table was placed behind them, sectioning off the room. On the other side of the table, a sunken tub dominated the space, with more columns set in a circle around it. White narcissus flowers draped between the columns in garlands, interwoven with other greenery. Beneath them, and beside the tub, a stone bench held a stack of neatly folded towels. And then there were the mirrors. Mirrors hung on every wall and reclined on nearly every surface that could support them. The ceiling above the bed even sported one. My face grimaced at me everywhere I looked. I turned my grimace on Narcissus. Let me guess, this is your bedroom. How did you know? He gaped at me as if I were psychic. Between those damn flowers and all the mirrors, it wasn't a big leap. Rolled my eyes. And then I noticed the curtains. Where there are curtains, there's usually a window. I rushed over and yanked the drapes open, revealing a huge window. An antique style. One of those types with the double frame that latches in the center and can be pushed open like French doors. I nearly shouted in relief. Then I tried the latch. It wouldn't budge. Here, let me try, Narcissus offered. It can be tricky. I moved aside and Narcissus wriggled it. The latch held firm. He shoved it with his shoulder, but it didn't even rattle. I think I may know what that clanging was, I said dryly. The one that came shortly after the mirror's threat to kill us all. It locked us in, Narcissus said as he turned to face me. Yep. I looked around for something heavy. A wooden vanity sat meekly to the left of the bath, beside a folding screen that I assumed hid a toilet. A chair posed before the low table with its collection of hairbrushes and crystal jars. I went over and grabbed the chair. As I shook my head at the vanity, what kind of man has a vanity? Sure, men groom themselves, at least the civilized ones do, but I've never known one to actually sit down before a mirror, brush his hair, and gussy himself up. But Narcissus' grooming habits weren't important at the moment. Getting out of that damn mirror house was. I lugged the chair back to the window, and Narcissus stepped out of my way. With an encouraging nod, I tossed the thing at the glass with all of my significant might and then jumped back, expecting shards to go flying. Nothing flew but the chair, right back into the room. Narcissus and I both gaped at it as it came to a screeching stop on a mosaic. What the? I didn't have the words. So it's war then, Narcissus muttered as he glared at the obstinate window. It seems that way, I agreed. I guess we're going to need a better plan. And a bigger boat. I grimaced. Or chair, rather. We may not have been dealing with a giant shark, but it sure felt as if I were floating in deep water with something monstrous circling below me. Something with sharp teeth and a huge appetite. Chapter 15. There was no way out of Narcissus' bedroom, only the door we had come through that now had a metal wall blocking it, and the indestructible window. The only other door in the room led to a closet, a long corridor full of wooden boxes. I had expected it to be a dressing room, but with Narcissus' ability to manifest clothing, he didn't need a dressing room. We spent hours trying to come up with a way out. Narcissus floating in his tub, he said the water helps him think, and I on one of the lounges. I was strung tightly with worry for Trevor and Kirill, but I could sense them through our bonds, and I knew they were alive. I could have even tracked them if there had been a way out of that damn room. Narcissus fell asleep at one point. Not in the tub, he'd gotten out to lie on a chaise across from me, and I watched him thoughtfully. Morpheus had said not to trust him. Yes, Narcissus had refused to kill me, but that clearly stemmed from my promise to get him out. If the mirror made it a choice between him or us, I had no doubt that it would be us. Not that I'd have chosen any differently, but it didn't allow for trust. I got up quietly and began to search the room. I might as well find out as much as I could about the Narcissus when I had the chance. There weren't a lot of hiding spots in the bedroom, so after I pulled open the vanity drawers and peered under the bed, I headed for the closet. What's in the box? I whined the 7 quote a la Brad Pitt. Damn it. Now I'm thinking of heads in boxes. I went to the first box and opened it warily. Then I gaped at the contents. Nope, not heads. I reached down and picked up a blonde braid of hair. Silky strands shone softly, bound by blue ribbon at each end. One of the ribbons had a tag attached to it. Looping script in sepia ink announced. Joy Pritchard, female. Geneva, Ohio, USA 2019. I dropped the hair as if I'd been burned. The box was full of them. Locks of hair in all colors, some long braids and some just tufts in tiny pouches. My eyes skimmed over other tags. Each lock bore a name, place and a year. I shut the lid with a soft but horrified thud. My skin ran cold as I looked down the line of boxes. On shaking legs I stood and went down the row, randomly flipping back lids. Every box contained locks of hair, the years on the tags going back further and further until I reached the end of the room and found hair dating back to a time before Christ's death. Granted, they didn't say BC on them, but I figured it out from the descent in numbers and then the sudden climb. The further back I went, the fewer braids there seemed to be for each time period. Narcissus had told the truth. The mirror had started taking more humans in recent years. What he hadn't told me was that he'd kept mementos of each victim. Or were they trophies? I hurried out of the room and found Narcissus still asleep on the chaise. Seriously considered killing him, but I wasn't certain that he was guilty of murder, nor was I sure what his death would do to the mirror and its curse. Narcissus might be the key to keeping this world of illusions from self-destructing. Magic can be tricky. I moved away from Narcissus and went to lie on his bed instead. I needed to calm down. I was already strung tightly because of the whole being trapped and separated from my husband's thing. The possibility that Narcissus was a psychopath on top of everything else was too much to deal with. Closed my eyes and started to breathe deeply. Maybe I could relax enough to sleep and contact Morpheus again. I slowed my breaths and forced my muscles to unclench until I did manage to fall asleep. But my dreams unfolded into nightmares, dark, filled with wet mist and completely devoid of dream gods. I called for Morpheus, but the mist swallowed the sound like cotton. I felt swathed in it and tossed restlessly until a pair of soft hands slid over my skin. I sighed as a warm body pressed against my back, a hard shaft seeking entrance between my thighs. Lips went to my neck and nibbled me there as a hand slid beneath the blankets and then beneath my bunched skirt. Hot tongue on my neck and expert fingers on my sex. I writhed and moaned awake. A finger slid inside me as the pad of a thumb rubbed me insistently, and I ground back against the urgent erection pressing between my ass cheeks. I turned my face to kiss my husband, but none of them lay behind me. It was Narcissus. I screamed and shoved him away from me. Narcissus smiled viciously and pushed me back down to straddle my body. Naked and flushed with arousal, he rose above me, his eyes full of heat and violence. He delivered a quick slap to my face and then dove down to nestle his face against my breasts. Narcissus bit me through the cloth and I bucked him off. A quick punch to that pretty face sent him sprawling, but when I tried to form my hands into dragon talons, my magic wouldn't come. Narcissus shambled to his feet, looking furious and intent on doing things to me that I didn't want to contemplate. I searched the room for a weapon while I internally searched myself for magic I could use, but everything seemed to be on the fritz. Could feel it inside me, but nothing rose to my call. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a door appear in the wall. I ran for it as Narcissus snarled and gave chase. It looked as if the mirror was taking pity on me. I didn't understand. Didn't the thing want me dead? Maybe that was it. It wanted me dead, not raped. Or perhaps it intended to rile up Narcissus until he killed me. Whatever motivated it, I was out of options. I took the escape offered. Another steel hallway formed as I ran, my footsteps clanging loudly in my ears. Despite the cacophony, I could hear Narcissus chasing after me. Vervain! Vervain, stop! Narcissus shouted. I ran faster. The corridor angled sharply to the left. I bounced off the wall. When I took it too quickly, Narcissus' footfalls boomed louder. My heart rattled in my chest, the beats reverberating through my body. There I was, running away again, and every cell inside my body wanted me to stop and fight. Every cell except for the ones in my brain. Those screamed at me to run, you damn fool. So I ran. A maze of metal corridors veined out ahead of me. I took turns without thought, just barely keeping ahead of my pursuer. Narcissus kept shouting at me as if I might actually stop. I slapped the walls as I ran. Were they closing in on me? I felt so damn claustrophobic in that place. My breath started coming in stilted gulps. And then finally the maze ended. I stumbled into a room. My relief faded as soon as it came. It was a dead end. Literally for one of us. The room had only one point of access, the door I'd just come through. It had no windows, no other doors, not even an air vent. But there just so happened to be a long table covered in weapons. How convenient. Blades of all shapes and sizes glinted at me wickedly beside the more muted finish of guns, whips, hooks, clubs, maces, and even a garrote. The only thing missing was a pair of bladed gloves. Oh well, you can't have everything. I snatched up a sword and settled into a battle stance as I faced the door. Had been a long time since I'd fought with a sword, but my hand gripped it with confident ease. I suppose a gun would have been a better choice. If my opponent had been human, bullets tended to bounce off gods. Hell, the sword might not even work. To slice through god necks, I had to enchant my kodachi with extra strength and sharpness. Vervain, Narcissus huffed as he appeared. He leaned against the door frame and blinked in shock. What are you doing? Defending myself, I growled. What do you think I'm doing? Against what? He glanced over his shoulder apprehensively. You asshole! I shouted and launched forward, blade extended. Narcissus screamed like a girl and jumped back. What the fuck? He backpedaled as I chased him, and then a transparent wall shimmered into existence between us. I pulled up short and scowled at him through the wall. I don't want to fight you, Vervain, Narcissus said breathlessly. Why are you attacking me? Because you just sexually assaulted me. I shouted at him and slammed the hilt of the sword against the wall. It trembled but held firm. Narcissus' eyes went wide. I did not. Yes, Narcissus, you did. I snapped. That's what it's called when you force yourself on a woman who doesn't want you. I was sleeping, I responded, because I thought you were one of my husbands, you slimy bastard. What are you talking about? Narcissus blinked at me in shock. I did not force myself on you. I haven't even been near you in hours. I woke up to see you running out of the room. What? I whispered as my sword lowered. I was sleeping and I heard you scream, Narcissus said more calmly. I sat up and you flailed about a bit. Then a door appeared and you ran out of it. I chased after you. I thought you might have lost your senses, and now I see that I was right. I woke up to someone touching me. I shook my head as I processed it. The clear barrier disappeared, and Narcissus cocked his head at me. And you thought it was me. It was you, I said firmly. I turned around and you were there. I tried to push you off and you slapped me. I punched you, that door opened, and I ran. Fuck, Narcissus whispered. It's the fucking mirror. You're telling me that I was just assaulted by a mirror? I growled. Yeah, I think you were. He looked back toward the room I'd emerged from and then strode past me and into it. When I followed him inside, I found him standing over the table of weapons. It seemed like a setup, but those locks of hair. I frowned. Narcissus and I had looked through that room together when we were trying to find a way out. The boxes had been there. I just hadn't thought to open one in his presence. But if they had been there before, that meant they weren't an illusion created by the mirror, which meant that I still couldn't trust Narcissus. But at least I didn't have to kill him immediately. I can't believe it did this to me, Narcissus whispered as he ran a hand over the weapons. I thought we were friends. Friends generally don't vow to kill each other, I said dryly. He was mad because I said I was leaving. Narcissus shook his head. I didn't take it personally, but this... He wanted me to kill you and he didn't care about risking me in the process. It's not a he, I said softly. It's a curse, Narcissus. It's your jailer and your punisher, not your friend. I guess this is what happens when you're cut off from the world. Narcissus sighed sadly as he lifted his gaze to mine. You see friends where they don't exist. At least it wasn't a soccer ball, I said dryly. Narcissus blinked at me. The mirror spoke to you, I amended. It tricked you just as it tricked me. It seems as if it did. He grimaced. Then a steel wall shot up between us, and I was pushed down another metal corridor by yet another shoving plate. Rats in a maze, that's all we were to. The mirror. Chapter 16. Mommy! Lesya's voice echoed down the corridor to me. I froze as panic iced through my body. It had to be a trick. But what if it wasn't? What if my brave, reckless daughter had found a way into the dressing room and then been pulled into the mirror? I turned toward the sound of her voice, knowing that even if it were really her, she was probably being manipulated. It didn't matter. I had to know for sure. Lesya. I called to her. Mommy, where are you? She sounded terrified and then she screamed. Let me go. All reason left me with that scream. I started running. I kept shouting for Lesya and she kept screaming. I followed her screams down a dark hallway until light appeared at the end of it. Golden rays drenched the cold gray metal, my daughter's voice streaming through a doorframe along with the light. I rushed through the opening and burst out into a village square. Yes, a village square. As in a clearing in the center of a village that looked straight out of early America. Wood-slat houses surrounded the packed earth clearing, all painted in drab colors. Filling the area were people in colonial clothing holding baskets of rotting fruit and muzzleloader rifles. They were shouting and jeering at something in the center of the square. No, not something, someone. My daughter. Lesya stood on a wooden platform, its base bristling with logs and kindling, tied to a thick pole. Tears flowed down her blotchy, red cheeks and her dark hair fell in wild tangles around her tiny body. Her arms strained at the ropes that bound her to the stake, red marks already striping her skin, and her screams clawed out of her throat interspersed with feral growls. A man nearby held an ominously burning torch. It was an old nightmare, one I had dreamed as a child, but I was always the one about to be burned at the stake as a witch. It had to be an illusion, but how real could the mirror make it? Could it actually kill my daughter? Would that fire burn hot enough to truly burn her? I pushed my way through the crowd and barreled into the man with the torch. My daughter cried out in relief when she saw me, but I couldn't reassure her. I was too busy bashing my fists into the monster who'd been about to set my child on fire. I snarled viciously as I hit him, and the crowd jostled in around us to watch. Like a bunch of teenagers at a schoolyard fight. My target lifted his arms to block his face, the torch sputtering off somewhere to our left where he had dropped it. He shouted something in a desperate tone, but I couldn't hear his words. Then his arms were around me, squeezing me tightly against his chest. I struggled against his hold and was about to break free when his scent hit me. Lion musk and delicious, man. I froze and felt something shimmering between us. A magical bond. Kirill, I whispered as I pulled back. The colonial man was gone and in his place laid my husband, blood dripping from his cut lip and eyes wide with shock. His hair was coming loose from his long braid. Wisps of it stuck to his angled jaw, held in place by the slight stubble. His chest rose and fell violently, but his shoulders drooped in relief. When I said his name, Tima, Kirill's voice went velvety with emotion as he hugged me tightly. Why did you attack me? You weren't you? I looked up at our daughter, still sobbing, but now it was with confused sniffles. You were a man holding a torch about to burn Lesya. I glanced around us and saw another man pick up the torch. The crowd looked furious at being denied a death and intent on rectifying that situation. I scrambled to my feet, and Kirill followed. Do you see her? I asked Kirill as I pointed at Lesya. Is she hallucination? I see her, Kirill growled a second before he started tearing his way through the firewood. The crowd lurched forward and grabbed him. Kirill snarled and fought them, but they restrained him easily. I leapt past them while they were distracted with him and climbed the pile of wood. I kissed my daughter on the forehead quickly, and then started untying her. The ropes were rough and tore at my fingers, but I kept trying. Even when my blood soaked into them, I kept trying. Mommy, Lesya sobbed. I'm sorry. I wanted to help you. It's okay, baby, I crooned to her. It's going to be. Hands grabbed me and yanked me down. I screamed and tore at them. They were amazingly strong for humans. But then I guess they weren't humans. This was all the mirror. She's just a little girl, I shouted. Let her go. She's an abomination. The man who had picked up the torch hissed in my face. A beast in a child's body. I will fucking tear this place apart, mirror. I screamed. You hurt her and I won't stop until you are only shards of useless glass. How much do you love her? The man grabbed me by the front of my dress and pulled me forward. Will you die for her? Will you take her place? Niet, Kirill shouted. I will die. Take me. You leave them alone. The man's head jerked toward Kirill and a vicious smile spread over his face. He started for Kirill. No, I shouted. Kirill. The men yanked him forward as another group untied Lesya. She tumbled down the wood and ran for me. Lesya hugged my legs as I struggled to get free of the men holding me. They had Kirill at the pole and were starting to tie him to it. When I took a deep sniff and realized that I couldn't smell Lesya, I searched for our link and found none. Kirill. It's not her. I kicked the illusion of my daughter away from me and it went tumbling backward. Kirill stopped and stared at me in shock before he looked at the sobbing doppelganger of our daughter. The men who had been leading him to the stake stood still, watching us warily. I frowned at that. They weren't forcing him to the pyre. Why not? It's the mirror, I shouted in revelation. It can't kill us. We have to kill each other or kill ourselves. That's the only way it can take our energy. Kirill's stare remained on the sobbing, fake Lesya, but then he slowly looked at me and then at the hands holding him. They fell away as he shook them off. I'm not sacrificing myself, mirror, Kirill growled. Wrong lion, I snarled at the torchbearer. Try Aslan, he might fall for. You're bullshit. The illusion, all of it, faded suddenly and we were left in an empty room, paneled with mirrors. I ran for Kirill and hugged him tightly. My body was trembling with fury, fear, and relief. She wasn't there. Lesya had never been there. It was all a trick. A deception to get one of us to kill ourselves. And it had nearly worked. Stay close to me, I whispered to Kirill. It can separate us if we stand far enough apart. That's what it did to Narcissus and me. I've got you, Kirill whispered in my ear. I won't let go, my love. Kirill moved back but kept a tight grip on my hand. We've got to find Trevor, I said grimly. Duh, Kirill said. We're split apart too. I was wandering hallways alone. Then I heard Lesya. I got to that village but didn't see her until after you attacked me. I heard her too. The mirror led me there, and you looked like one of those villagers except you were holding a torch, I said. The mirror is learning our weaknesses and exploiting them. It showed Trevor and me images of you with Narcissus. Kirill grimaced. It's devious indeed. As if I'd ever want that egotistical pretty boy, I scoffed. Kirill's lips twisted wryly. Trevor said same zing. The mirror attacked me this morning using Narcissus' face, I added. I ran. And when the real Narcissus chased me, I tried to kill him. I nearly did, but luckily Narcissus refused to attack me. He was able to convince me that it hadn't been him who had attacked me, and we figured out that it was the mirror. He was pretty shaken by the mirror's betrayal. He considered it a friend, and now that friend has turned on him. After his little revelation, it put a wall between us and forced us apart. Divide and conquer. Kirill stared around the empty room warily. It's playing with us. No, this isn't a game to it. This is survival. We've threatened to take its charge and now it's defending itself. But its only weapon is illusion. That's a powerful weapon, he said grimly. Kirill's stare was shaky. I knew the image of our daughter tied to the stake would haunt him as it would me. A nightmare too vivid to escape. It's only powerful when you don't know it's being used against you. Squeezed his hand reassuringly. We know its tricks now and we know how to see past them. It can't fake scent or bonds. I knew it wasn't Lesya because I couldn't smell her, and when I searched for our link, it wasn't there. But see, food. Kirill frowned as he considered it. Then wait, I remember smelling it. Those are known smells, things that Narcissus would remember, I mused. I think the mirror is limited to the knowledge it can find in Narcissus. They're bonded. That's how it keeps him imprisoned, and it's how Narcissus can use the magic of the mirror to create things. But Narcissus won't know what Lesya smells like. Kirill nodded. Okay. From here on we sent first, feel next, and then act. Chapter 17. The mirrors around us shimmered and then a scene unfolded. It moved around the room, sliding across the mirrors as if trying to get our attention until it finally settled on the wall to our left. Kirill and I warily turned to watch. Narcissus stood before the mirror's frame, staring out of the glass portal. The mirror zoomed in on his face, shocked but also eager. It panned out to show a man standing on the other side of the mirror, the real side. Swarthy and exotically handsome, the man looked as if he belonged on a white stallion, riding across the Sahara with his ebony hair covered in a trailing turban that left nothing but his keen stare visible. A stunning man to be sure, but it was his sparkling rainbow eyes that jolted me. The mirror focused in on those eyes as if it had noticed my response. Who is that? Kirill asked. You recognize him, don't you? Remember when I went forward into Ree's memories and experienced that future? That wasn't meant to be. I asked him. Duh. When I was there I fought 3 gods. You killed them. Kirill nodded. You vant to kill them again, preemptive strike. Ree and the 4 horsemen actually killed them, I corrected him. But yes, I was going to kill them in this timeline, except Silenus made that prophecy that made me reconsider. Duh, at our wedding. That's right. I looked back at the image in the mirror. It had zoomed out to show both of the men again. And that's one of those gods. Skaz, the Arabian god of rainbows. That is going on? Kirill whispered as he drew me forward with him. We stood in front of the image and watched as Kaz held a pad of paper up to the glass. The words were backward. Narcissus frowned and shook his head at Kaz as he made a twirling motion with his fingers. Damn it, I can't read that, Narcissus said, even though Kaz couldn't hear him. And I can't manifest a mirror down here either. Kaz scowled, looked at the paper, and then seemed to realize the problem. He left and Narcissus started pacing anxiously, but Kaz shortly returned with a mirror. Setting the mirror to face Narcissus, he held up the paper facing in and tried again. The words came into focus. That's how Narcissus knew to warn us about the words being backwards. I murmured. Then I read Kaz's words and cursed. Strawberry shortcake. He vas varned, Kirill said softly. Then he frowned and grabbed my arm. Can't trust this Vervain. Mirror could be misleading us as it tried to do to Trevor and me. What did it show you exactly? I asked softly. Kirill's frown deepened. You mean seen with Narcissus? Yes, what did it look like? Why are you asking? Kirill growled as his grip tightened. Because Narcissus came onto me at the pool, I admitted. Nothing happened. Well, nothing for you to be mad about. He came onto me, I refused. He was confused because no woman has ever done that to him before, and so he tried again, and I threatened to tear off his dick. Kirill choked out a laugh. You vat. He pulled it out of his shorts and started stroking it. I rolled my eyes. I think he thought it would seduce me, so I told him that if he didn't put it away I'd remove it. Kirill's jaw clenched before he spoke. And you don't think that's something I should be mad about? Narcissus has been here a long time. I shrugged. He apologized and told me he was lonely and truly thought that a woman with 2 husbands would be open to some side action. I let it go, and I didn't want to upset you and Trevor, so I kept it to myself. You should have told us. Kirill shook his head. The mirror showed us you and Narcissus lying beside each other in the grass while he rubbed his dick. Trevor and I were convinced it was a trick, but it sounds as if it really happened, just not exactly as it appeared. If you had told us, we would have been warned, and we would have known sooner to be careful of it. You're right, I'm sorry. I grimaced. I thought it would cause more trouble than it was worth. Kirill nodded and kissed my forehead to let me know I was forgiven. But my point is, if it showed you the truth before, this could be it again. It showed us truth, but in a way to make us believe a lie, Kirill argued. It's tricky, we cannot trust it. But this makes sense. I waved a hand at the image that had paused, focused on Kaz. I don't think we should ignore it. We're already suspicious of Narcissus, he reminded me. Now we'll be even more wary, I said grimly. I looked back at the words written on Kaz's pad. The Godhunter will be pulled into the mirror soon. Get her to sacrifice herself, and you will gain her magic and be strong enough to escape. Kirill pointed at the message. It says to get you to sacrifice yourself, not kill you. Narcissus knew that he'd have to trick you into taking your own life. But how did Kaz know that? I narrowed my stare at the Arab. Kirill shrugged. Research. Perhaps another god told him? Doesn't matter. Narcissus knew. But he wasn't expecting all of us, I said with soft menace. Whoever set this up intended for me to get pulled in alone. You said Ree killed Kaz in that future? Yeah. I stared at the Arabian god as his image finally faded away. But Kaz wouldn't know that. Maybe he senses something. He could feel it as instinct, Kirill said. You may have averted that future, but it left echoes of itself. Ree of proof of that. Do you think Cuz could be the god who manipulated the Argentinian gods into hunting me? Could be. Kirill nodded. Somehow he managed to trick Ri into buying that mirror. That would take finesse skill. Or Cuz simply found out about the sale, I muttered. But the real question is, why did the mirror show us this? It can only be one reason. Advance us to kill Narcissus. Better dead than escaped, I murmured. We're its backup plan. But if that's true, why try to kill us? Priority must be to gain our magic to sustain itself, Kirill mused. And if that doesn't work, it will use us to make sure Narcissus never leaves, I finished. We have something advance, Kirill said with a devious look. And it has someone we want. I nodded. Give me back Trevor mirror. Then we'll see about Narcissus. A door appeared in the wall, and I grinned triumphantly at Chapter 18. Never trust a mirror. Kirill and I strode confidently down the steel corridors, believing the mirror was leading us to Trevor. But all it had done was open a path. It hadn't really agreed to a bargain, although it did lead us to Trevor. Or him to us, rather. Kirill and I stepped out of the hallway and into a bright white room. It was so bright that I covered my eyes with my forearm until they adjusted. During my brief blindness, I was grabbed and shoved roughly about as I blinked in disorientation. I thrashed wildly as I heard Kirill growling, but I couldn't free myself. Then steel bands replaced the hands as I was strapped to a hard bed. Correction. An exam table. My feet were set in metal stirrups, my legs spread wide, and my clothes replaced with a baby blue paper hospital gown. A man dressed in scrubs with a paper mask covering the lower half of his face crouched between my thighs with a devious-looking device in his hand. The black handle had a long metal tube attached to it and was hooked up to a large whirring machine. I flailed about, but the metal bands held me securely. Kirill roared and beat against the bars of a cage nearby. He was on the verge of shifting. I could see the bones rippling beneath his skin, but he couldn't complete the transformation. The damn mirror had to be holding him back. Vervain! Trevor shouted as he ran forward. A bunch of orderlies restrained him. He tried to shift too, his body bulging and his face snarling. It wasn't pretty. Everyone relax, the doctor between my legs said. This is a common procedure. I'll have the little monster out of her in no time. Vero, I whispered in horror. No, Trevor shouted and managed to fling a few of the men off him. Trevor only made it 2 feet before they restrained him again. Several more orderlies appearing out of thin air. Don't you fucking touch her. Trevor howled and his eyes glowed golden honey. The wolf had returned. Calm yourself, the doctor said. There's a simple solution. The doctor waved his hand and a pit opened in the floor right in front of the wolf. It was full of steel spikes taller than Kirill. Your life for that of your son, the doctor said. What will it be, wolf? Prince. Just a few steps forward will save him. Trevor, no. I shouted. It can't hurt me, so it. A gag appeared over my mouth and I shouted through it. But the mirror had forgotten about Kirill. It's trying to make you kill yourself. Kirill shouted. It's not real. Trevor. It can't hurt her. It gets nothing if it kills your child, but Vith. The mirror gagged Kirill too, but it was too late. The wolf was smart enough, devious enough, to figure out the rest for himself. He gave a wild howl and shook off the orderlies. I will not play your game. The wolf covered his eyes with his hands, blocked his ears, and started humming like a 3-year-old. I laughed my damn ass off. The illusion vanished, and I was able to laugh more fully, standing on my feet. In my old clothes instead of that horrible hospital gown. Kirill rushed over to me, and we hurried to the wolf to make sure the mirror couldn't separate us. Again, I pulled at his ears, but the wolf held firm. Kirill shook his head and snickered as I tried to shout at the wolf that it was over. Finally I wedged my face between his hands and kissed him. The wolf inhaled deeply and his hands fell away from his eyes as he returned my kiss. His arms wound around me and he pulled me closer, his tongue a hot demand in my mouth. I groaned into the pleasure but pulled away before it consumed me. This was not the place or time for that. Wolf, I asked as I searched his eyes. Is Trevor all right? We're both fine now, mate. The wolf laid his forehead against mine and sighed. We were lost in a metal maze. Your voice called to us and then we found you here. Kirill was right. The mirror's priority was to get us to kill ourselves. Killing Narcissus was its last resort. It's all illusion. The mirror can't kill us. I'm not sure why, but I think it's because it wouldn't be able to claim us as sacrifices if it did. As become like a god, a tricky one. It showed us Narcissus talking to Cause and Cause warned him that I would be coming into the mirror, and that if he got me to sacrifice myself, Narcissus would become powerful enough to escape. Cause? Isn't he one of the rainbow gay gods who was with the bottled water? Goddess? The wolf asked. I laughed softly. Yeah, cause Gish and Disani. That's probably why mirror thinks it cannot kill us, Kirill mused. Cause told Narcissus to get Vervain to sacrifice herself, not kill her. Could be something to do with the curse, the wolf mused. Whatever it is, we've learned that the mirror can't replicate sense or the feeling of our bonds. If you're in doubt, use your other senses, I said, quickly as I clasped Kirill's hand and tucked him in more tightly against me. And we can't let the mirror separate us again. If there isn't enough space between us, it shouldn't be able to wall us off. Stay close and use all of my senses. The wolf nodded. Got it. His hand strayed to my belly protectively. We must get free of this place, mate. By any means. We will, I said. Have faith in the others. They'll find Nemesis and she'll break the curse. Until then, we just have to stay alive, Kirill said. Chapter 19. Another door appeared. I think we should stay here. I stared at the door warily. We just need to hunker down and wait. Maybe you should try contacting Morpheus again, Kirill suggested. I tried last night, but he wasn't there, I said. I could give it another go. If I can manage to get to sleep. Lie across us, the wolf offered. Then we'll all be together. We can watch over you until you wake up. I like the sound of that, I agreed. The men sat down cross-legged and I laid across their laps. Took a bit of wiggling to get comfortable, but I was finally able to settle on my side. Facing them, my head rested on the wolf's lap and my belly pressed against Kirill's. The scent of my men covered me like a blanket, and that, combined with the sound of their steady breaths and stroking hands, helped me relax enough to fall asleep. The Fae created the dream realm, so as a fairy I had a significant amount of control over it. When I fell asleep and found myself dreaming, I wasn't just able to recognize it as a dream, I was also able to control my dream and move beyond it. Why would I need to move beyond it? Because Morpheus was once again absent. And what did moving beyond a dream even mean? It meant that I was going to leave my dream and head into another. If I could find Morpheus, that would be ideal, because he'd be able to recognize me as the real me right away, as opposed to believing me to be part of his dream as another person who wasn't a dream god might. I searched the dark beach of my dream. I don't know why I dreamt of the beach. It was not my favorite place, not by a long shot, but night had made it bearable. The sky above me twinkled with stars and a soft breeze warmly caressed my skin. Moonlight guided me down the pristine shore, salty waves shushing against the sand with a tropical lullaby. There you are, I muttered to myself, hovering in shadows of some jellicote pines, their weeping needles shivering in. The salty air was a hazy spot in a rectangular shape. As I focused on it and approached, it became more defined, turning into a curtain of wispy indigo mist. The veil of my dream. On the other side of the condensed mist veil waited the rest of the dream realm. I brushed aside the curtain and stepped into an infinite room of similar veils, all of them suspended in the air with seemingly nothing behind them. But I knew the truth. Every one of those insubstantial curtains led to the imaginary world of someone's dreams. Morpheus, I shouted. If the dream god were anywhere near his cave, he should be able to hear me. If he were actually sleeping, it would be more difficult. I didn't have a link to Morph, so finding him among the millions of dreams would be nearly impossible. But he is the guardian of the gates of Horn, the passage into this realm. Just needed him to be awake and nearby. But how often do I actually get what I need when I need it? I called for Morpheus a good 5 minutes before I decided that I was wasting my time. Then I closed my eyes and focused on the links inside me. There were several possibilities. All of my husbands were bound to me through vows of blood to heart. I just recently completed one such vow with Rhea on our honeymoon. Then there was Thor, who I still held a connection to through his vow of blood to mouth that he'd made to me years ago. Finally, if none of them were sleeping, there was always my link to my lions. Surely one of them was taking a cat nap. The link that finally rose up to lead me into a dream belonged to none of those people. It led me to Fenrir. I had loosely bound myself to the wolf god. A long time ago, nearly as long ago as I'd accepted Thor's vow of protection. Back when I'd healed the wolf god with my love magic. The magic had formed a link between us. Normally, that connection hovered gently beneath all of the other bonds inside me. I had so many damn ties that it's a wonder they don't get tangled up inside me. But my other ties weren't leading me anywhere in the dream realm. It was Fenrir who lit up and pulled me to him. I strode unerringly to the billowing curtain of mist and then passed into Fenrir's dream. I found the great wolf standing at the top of a hill with Emma, his wife, staring down at a couple of wolf pups playing. I smiled as I approached them. Fenrir loved children, and I wasn't surprised by his dream. "Dad," I called to him. Fenrir turned his head and smiled at me. "There you are. We were just wondering where you'd gotten off to." "You were?" I asked. "I told Emma you wouldn't leave your pup for long," he said smugly. "My pup?" I asked as I looked back at the wolves. "Is that Vero?" "Of course," Fenrir frowned. "Who's the other one?" "That's Ethan," he said with confusion. "You know that." "Dad, this is a dream, your dream," I started with the explanation. "I'm trapped in a mirror, and this is the only way I can contact anyone. And you're the only one sleeping right now." "What are you talking about?" Fenrir huffed. "This isn't a dream. There's your son playing with mine right there. They're as real as can be." "Ethan is your son?" I asked with surprise. "Of course he's my son," Fenrir growled. "What are you playing at?" "Dad, I'm sorry, this is going to be shocking, but I don't have time to coax you into this." I took control of Fenrir's dream and wiped out everything. Suddenly we stood in an empty room. Fenrir jolted and turned in a circle, searching for his home and family. "What have you done?" he roared. "Dad, it's a dream," I shouted at him. Fenrir's chest was rising and falling rapidly and his eyes were glazed with fury. "Bring back my wife and child now." I focused on his dream and everything returned. The little wolf pups were back to playing and Emma was standing to the side, waiting patiently. "It's a dream," I tried again. "You know what? Never mind. Just listen to what I have to say and try to remember it. You'll realize I'm speaking the truth. When you wake up, I need you to go to my husbands and tell them that the mirror has turned on us. It's been pulling humans into it and feeding on their energy. It's very powerful. We're being manipulated and hunted in here. They need to find Nemesis as fast as possible." "Nemesis?" Fenrir whispered, completely astounded. "Just remember what I said, Dad," I said urgently. Mid-sentence everything puffed away. My soul flew backwards through the veil of Fenrir's mind and into mine. I came gasping awake in the wolf's arms, my body jostled about. He was running with Kirill close beside us, Kirill's hand on his shoulder. "What's going on?" I asked as the adrenaline of my fear shoved away sleep. Sharply. "The mirror is moving us," the wolf growled. I looked over Kirill's shoulder and saw one of those metal plates pushing us down the corridor. "I can run," I said. "Put me down." "I'm not stopping until we're safe," the wolf refused. "Just hold on, mate." I grabbed his shoulders and held on, keeping a close eye on the rapidly moving plate behind us. The mirror was getting more aggressive. I guess it didn't like us trying to sit out the game. Either that or it had decided to kill us. After all. But wouldn't it have just slaughtered us in that room if it had? There were several ways it could manage it. I blinked and thought about it. Perhaps it wasn't cause warning or even the fact that it couldn't take energy from us if it killed us. Perhaps the mirror couldn't affect us with its illusions. They seemed real and felt real, but so had the food, and Narcissus said the food, although filling, didn't have any real nutrition to it. So maybe the illusions didn't have any real power to them. I considered how the mirror had tried to get Kirill to burn himself on that pyre and Trevor to cast himself in that pit. Why would it work if the men had done it? Perhaps it was the belief, Kirill's and Trevor's belief, that they were dying that would have killed them. I remember hearing once that if you die in a dream, you die in real life because your mind will believe you to be dead. Belief is a very powerful magic, especially when used by gods. But did it really matter how or why the mirror was doing all of this? All I needed to remember was to not believe its illusions. Hopefully Nemesis would save us before things got too horrible in this realm of reflections. Suddenly light and laughter surrounded me. I turned to look forward just as I was jerked away from the wolf. I clung to him, but the arms that took me were too strong for either of us. I was torn away from my husband and flung back into a boisterous crowd of beautiful people, all dressed in vibrant costumes. Colorful feathers, silk, velvet, damask, leather and jewels adorned the dancing throng in styles of dress that spanned history. The men who held me spun me in a circle as they laughed, and when I tried to keep my eyes on the wolf and Kirill, they blocked my line of sight. I was dipped and lifted, held tightly to one man and yanked around the dance floor, until another swept me away. My vision swam with viciously smiling faces and my ears rang with strident stringed music. Wolf! I shouted. Kirill! I could feel them there, but I couldn't hear them or see them. The only faces in the room belonged to strangers. Everything sparkled and gleamed doubly bright after the dull blandness of the metal hallway. Gold adorned the walls, and mirrors lined the floor. I looked down into infinity and realized there were mirrors above us as well. I laid my head back and screamed at myself.